everyone, what is going on? Today, going over the difference between lowering springs and lowering sleeves. Obviously, these are the cheaper routes instead of going to get a coilover setup, which can cost up around $1,000 if not more, depending on your car and brand and what kind of function you want out of them. So first off, springs, they're going to be the easiest to swap out because like these E-Box, they will go right into the factory upper and lower mounts, and you're just going to have to compress them, pull out the old springs, compress this, put it on the shock, put it back together. Sleeves are going to be a little bit more difficult, and you know, you're kind of stuck with whatever the springs are for drop. So these were 1.5 inches, and that's all you get. That's it, 1.5 inches set spring rate, and you're kind of done. Obviously in sleeves you get a little bit of adjustment out of it, but the problem is if you're using like an upgraded shock, you know, it's still the same travel as if it was normal. So the only thing really special you're probably going to need is some way of compressing the spring. I don't have an OEM spring assembly to show you, so this is one that was assembled and was ran on the Stratus along with this guy for a couple years, and I really liked it. Didn't really have any problems with it. Still had some body roll, obviously, because these are the Pro Street models, so they're not too harsh to ride on. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take these guys, put them on each side, and compress them off. Alright, so got them on there. It's a little tricky not having a vise. Probably have to invest in one of those fairly soon. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to work these down side by side, just little by little, until you have enough to unbolt the top. So these were kind of easy to do because these were already lower than factory, but as you can see, the top is now separated. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to grab 2 wrenches to break the top here. You're going to have to use 2 wrenches. So now you're going to take your mount off, your washers. Keep an eye on how everything goes back together, and then you're going to take your shock off, and all this stuff. All this is going to come off. Sometimes it's a good idea to go new, but sometimes you just don't have the budget to do that. And so since these were already on lowering springs, the bump stops are already cut down for what E-Box says to do it. And then to reinstall, all you're going to have to do is you'll have to take your new spring, which, since this is an example, this is the same one. You'll compress it down, make sure all your mounts are good. You'll slip everything back together. Make sure you have all your washers and everything exactly how you took them off. You know, make sure all this seats right normally. And then you'd reassemble it. And that would basically be it for doing lowering springs. Now we're going to move over to a coil over sleeve. Now, this is going to take a little bit more work because like these struts here, they have this top piece, and that is not good. The strut is way down in there, and you'll probably be smacking the top of this mount. So the first thing you're going to have to do is for these style, you're going to have to kind of knock this cap off. you have this cap off, and for these style, they kind of just sit right on the top of this here. Some brands, you know, these might be longer, so you're going to have to knock this collar off so that they sit down lower. But for these, that's just kind of how they sit. And as you can see, like, here's just the very bottom of the strut, so it's still not completely bottoming out. And even when the spring's at its lowest position, there's no way you're ever going to like completely bottom that out. So when you get a sleeve kit like this, they come with these little rubber rings, and what those are for is to help take up the gap in here. Some guys will use a couple of them. My kit only had one set for each strut because they were used. So I put one on, and then you'll just kind of work it down, like so. This strut's still pretty good. So this is at its lowest setting, and then you'll go ahead and put, you know, your coil on. The good thing about this type of setup is you could always probably go to Summit. You could probably order any spring rate you wanted, or a taller spring, or anything like that. So you can just swap them out. So if you're really into drag racing, and say you really want a certain strut or a KYB or something like that, you can make your own coilover system. You can build your own. You can pick your own spring rates, all of that. So then you'll put your top on, and then from there, you will take this mount, which you're not going to need this piece anymore because that is just for those styles. And then this will ride kind of right on there, unfortunately. Just like that. Then you'll put your top on. I forgot one more piece there. So I forgot this little piece. This is the piece that rides here, so that it doesn't, it keeps this with it, you know. There we go. Then you would put this guy on like that. And you'll crank that down yourself. Like so. It helps sometimes to do this with an impact, but just for showing you guys, this is how it's going to go. And so there you go. There is now your coilover sleeve. Now obviously this is a lot shorter than having that on there, so you lose a lot of travel. So if you're using like an OEM shock, don't be surprised if it blows out eventually. If you grab an upgraded one, it might be better. But now, as you can see, we can raise it up even. So this is kind of, so this is one of the downfalls of having a setup like this, is that when it's even at its highest, the shock can still travel a little bit more. I don't think this little much will matter, but when you're lowered, you have to figure this shock can still go really high. So if you're jacking up your car a lot, and you know, this might come unaligned, when you're lower down, it might get caught. All right, so this is basically your outcome. You know, if you're using either lowering spring or lowering sleeve, both these options are probably about a couple $100, whereas coilovers would be 1,000 or so. And you can use your own struts if they're still good instead of buying new. So basically, you can either make your car handle a little bit better for cheap, or lower it for cheap. I would not recommend ever getting like the $80, $100 sets of these off eBay, because they'll be very stiff and your car will be very bouncy. If you buy a good set like Ground Control or E-Block or Teen or whatever, They'll probably recommend somewhere what kind of strut you could use with it. And then again with these, you know, you could always swap out the spring rating for either a taller spring or a stiffer spring or softer spring and dial it in. With these, you're just kind of stuck. So my view on these are, this is a good way to make your car handle for a couple $100. And this is a good way to lower your car for a couple $100. Once you get into a coilover setup, you kind of get the best of both worlds, and they're a lot easier to install because you don't have to completely rebuild this. So like and subscribe. Till next time, hope you guys liked the video.